No,
Go.
no streaming. All right. We're live both on Instagram and every platform. Welcome to Ego Training, everyone. Let's see how it's going. Welcome, welcome, welcome. We're going to wait a couple minutes, get everybody in. Ego training is probably the best practice that I've done over the last 13 years. Understanding the ego, identifying the ego, executing on the ego will allow us to draw that unbelievable power, light, love, and lessons that we want, even in times of uncertainty, times of accelerated change, good times, all times. The ego is crucial to understand, and it's changed my life and many others that we've trained. Um, thank you for coming to this. I'm super duper excited. On a Friday, best way to end my week is with everybody on ego training. And welcome as we join in. Ego stands for, as we get going, edging goodness out of your life. And we're going to talk about how it does that and why it does that and how many different lives are driven by the projection of the ego. But let's talk about how ego edges goodness into your life first. And the purpose of the ego is to protect, right? It has a need for to be fed, right? The ego is the thing that tells you, hey, if you don't eat, your existence will not you will not exist, right? It allows us not to take our existence for granted. And so the ego has been originated. That was the main focus of the ego, was to make sure that we got fed. That also allowed us to fight and flee and to continue the race. And there's another F word that goes with that one as well. But the ego is edging goodness into our lives by protecting our physical being. And that's pretty much why the ego's there, and how it edges goodness into our life is that we want to make sure that we're listening to our ego. If we look down off a skyrise, we don't want to jump. And we have to manage that ego because it affects way more than just our embodiment. And that's where it starts edging goodness out of our life. And so the first step in understanding the ego is understanding to identify and define it for ourselves. So because it's there to protect the body, it has needs, a need to be fed, a need to be flight, a need to be fight, and a need to propagate, to create our humanity and grow. But it also has some other needs that have manifested itself to do that. Number one, a need to be separate. So one of the biggest lessons to understand about the ego is that it has a need to be separate. And then there's all these subsets about a need of the ego to be separate, because if I identify myself as a body, then I must be separate from all the other bodies out there. And so at its core, because it's survival based, the flee, fight, feed, and the other F word, it separates us. And then once you realize that separation, now you can get to the core of where it affects us with resistance, shortages, voids, and obstacles in our lives, where it starts corroding and interfering with that great connection of light, love, and lessons that we're always connected to, and the connection that we have with everyone else. Because at its core, the needs of the ego is to protect the body. And if therefore we are a body, then we are separate from all the other bodies and all the other objects that we see, feel, hear, taste, and touch, and remember. And the problem, as you guys know, of the things we hear, feel, taste, touch, and remember, is that we have very faulty systems that don't give us stable data. And that's where the word edging comes in, right? It edges in goodness, but it edges out goodness through its separateness. And so we have the need to be inferior. We have a need to be superior. We have a need to be right. One of the most wasteful things, if you have any type of relationships, think how much time, energy, emotion, value you've wasted having a need to be right, a need to be offended, a need to be guilty, fearful, anxious, all these different needs of the ego. If you bottled them up and quantitatively looked at them, imagine how much money you've wasted with the needs of the ego edging goodness out of your life. And so if we realize what the ego is to protect the body and preserve the body, and that therefore the ego thinks our body is separate from all other bodies and all other things, now we get a grip on how do we utilize the ego to edge the goodness into our life and not edge the goodness out of our life. And so we're going to talk about the ego and the EGI, EGI, because that's what I want you to live with, is the process of edging goodness into our lives by understanding and identify the sole purpose of the ego itself, which will allow our preservation of our embodiment. And so how do we do that? The word edging, right? The word edging is critical to everyone because we don't have dramatic differences. We edge things. I talked about earlier today, Sergey Bubka's the world record holder, I believe still in the pole vault. He pole vaulted over 20 feet. And I'm sure with his extraordinary size, speed, strength, and agility, the first time he grabbed a pole vaulting pole, he didn't walk below 20 feet and think that he could go ahead and clear that bar. He edged his way up there, and he learned how to hold the pole, and then he learned how to walk with the pole, then he learned how to run with the pole, then plant the pole. There's 58 things actually from the time you plant a pole vaulting pole until you clear the bar. And all of those things come from the concept of practice. Practice takes consistent behavior, and we talk about why, because the senses you have, the 5 senses in the memory, are faulty. So to get stable data, we need to do things consistently every day, persistently without quit, in the pursuit of the heights that we want to reach, our potential. And so we have to have a lifetime perspective that we're edging our way towards our potential. We're edging our way every day, incremental segmentation, keep on edging our way towards that. And the step process to do that is to, one, identify when we are in ego-based consciousness. Identify by understanding for yourself when you feel that separation, when you feel that there is a need to be right, offended, separate, inferior, superior, anxious, guilty, angry, frustrated. And what's the thermostat for that? There's only one thermostat to identify how you're or when you're in ego-based consciousness. And that thermostat is your feelings. If you feel good, you are not in ego-based consciousness. You are edging goodness into your life. You're in EGI-based consciousness, the I am consciousness. I am whatever I dream I can be, as long as I effectuate it in the incremental segmentation with the enjoyment of the consistent, persistent pursuit of my potential. But we need to know how we feel. That's why it's so critical to take a baseline every day. Now, you can take inventory of your values, your personal, experiential, giving and receiving values. You can meditate, you can walk, anything that puts you at your highest frequency. I talk about the myth of Sisyphus is how I see the majority of people living their lives. They spend their entire existence pushing big boulders up to the top of the hill just to have them roll all the way back down while they're sleeping at night. We want to plateau and grow. We want to identify who I am. And we want to identify when we feel that we are on a different trajectory from that inventory of our values. And so it's very important to have a baseline, to understand how we feel in the beginning of our day so we know when we're off of trajectory. This is a lifelong practice of edging, a lifelong practice. And I don't know even myself if I'm 1% of the way there, 90% of the way there, 95% of the way there. And it doesn't matter because I'm enjoying that consistent, persistent pursuit of my potential to identify the separateness. Because what happens as well in ego-based consciousness, not in EGI-based consciousness, but ego-based consciousness, is not only do we go in the wrong trajectory, but because the emotional aspect of the ego, we accelerate. Because the ego has an extra fuel. It's called fear. And fear is an accelerant. When we are afraid, we physically, the manifestation of our own embodiment, the reason we're protecting it, it shoots adrenaline through us. It shoots all of these different chemicals and biochemicals in order to allow us to flee, to fight, to feed, and of course, to propagate ourselves. It is an accelerant in the wrong direction, though. If we're an ego-based consciousness, and there's so many examples in your life, the example that I use is most simply to me when I'm driving in the direction that I want to drive, and now I move to ego-based consciousness, it's literally like getting on the freeway in the wrong direction and realizing consciously that I'm in the wrong direction and pressing the gas and wondering why I'm all the way at the border when I should be up in San Francisco. Right? It's an incredible circumstance because not only does it put you on the wrong trajectory, but this delta in between here is the resistance, the voids, the shortages and obstacles that we create for ourselves. We make things difficult. And that's why we practice stop, drop, and roll if we can identify when we are in ego-based consciousness. Now, the ego-based consciousness and stop, drop, and roll is stop, identify, drop to your baseline, how you feel, so you feel good again, and then roll in the right trajectory. Now, easier said than done. What are some of the practices to do that? Well, I'm going to use cold calling as an example. I have a practice called cancel, clear, and connect. So many times, the faulty system of what we think, say, do, the touch, hear, smell, taste of ours tells us negative thoughts, attacking thoughts. And all of us have this voice in our head, and it talks to our conscious. Can't do that. You're not good enough. You're not worthy. Right? You have all of these things within your conscious that tell you, don't do it. Don't do it. It's like the same as your voice in your head says, don't jump off the cliff. It says, don't start a business. Right? Don't do what your parents, want you to do. Don't do this. Don't do this. Well, I started edging goodness into my life with a practice called cancel, clear, connect. So anytime I have a thought that's not aligned with my objective, in which I determine by the trajectory I want of the values I have, I just cancel it. So I don't know where my mind goes at times. Sometimes it has attacking thoughts, negative thoughts, ego-based thoughts. I simply am training my brain not to allow one of the 10,000 thoughts I consciously have during the day, some which are a communication between some voice within my head, some are a communication between other people and myself, some are a communication of what I read, hear on the news, whatever it is, I simply say cancel. I say it in my head and I say it out loud at times. If I'm telling a story with attacking thoughts, judgments, conditions, ego-based emotions, I cancel it. I make a practice that I'm not going to input any negativity, shortages, voids, obstacles, corrosion, or interference into my system, because in the end, it will change my personality, characteristics, obsessions, addictions, my energy, my frequency. It will lower my vibration, which lowers my awareness. And my awareness is my superpower, because if I can be aware of certain things, everything in my life is easy, simple, and comes through me for others, and it is allowed to happen. So cold calling is my example, because at no other time do I have so many different voices when I'm cold calling. And I feel separate. I feel inferior. I feel scared. I'm afraid of rejection, right? And it gets worse and worse the more that I call. And so I started to utilize the practice of cancel. And so not only do I cancel the negative thoughts, which almost everybody has, because nobody likes rejection, because that hurts and our body doesn't want us to be hurt. And so what I do is I cancel those thoughts and I replace it with a positive thought, like this will be effortless. I'm providing 120 value. I actually think about in the mornings, look around and envision $100 bills filled with my room, and I'm just trading $100 bills for 20. And those are the thoughts that I'm replacing what I cancel. It can be utilized in anything that we try, right? We have 3 zones: the comfort zone, where we're not trying anything. It's just inherent, like riding a bike. Then we have the learning zone, where we're actually trying things and we risk rejection and failure. And then we have the anxiety zone. And we want to be as close to the anxiety zone as possible. So we want to use the ego, engage the ego in the way we feel. But if you live out in the anxiety zone too long, as you can tell during this period, all of a sudden your anxiety zone shrinks down your learning zone. And pretty soon your anxiety zone could actually shrink your comfort zone. And that's how some people don't get out of bed and get depressed and anxious and even suicidal. What we want to do is expand by keep on pushing through the struggle, smiling, learning, enjoying the consistent, persistent pursuit of our potential, by canceling all of that negative pressure that's trying to shrink us down into the comfort zone. Instead, now our comfort zone is the size of our learning zone, and our learning zone is the size of our anxiety zone. And there's a whole new layer of out there that what used to make us anxious now is very comfortable or learning. And we have more challenges to struggle and smile through. That's the whole key to what you do. And it starts by consciously knowing that I have 10,000 new thoughts a day, and I better control through my faulty senses and my faulty memory, giving myself good data about what I want. And so cancel the rest. And so a lot of times, one of the fun things I do at my office when I have some of our salespeople, on the sponsorship side of things, they can't get a hold of someone, somebody doesn't ever get back to them, and weeks are going by and they said, what should I do? I actually close my eyes. I cancel their negative thoughts. I cancel their resistance, voids, and shortages. And I think about the effortless call that I'm going to make, full of more value in which I'm going to give than I'm going to ask for. And I pick up the phone with that energy in mind, all positive manifestation energy of what I want, and I dial. And as they sit there in shock, the people answer. How'd you do that? Because I cleared the resistance. We're all connected. I'm not separate like you. I didn't create a resistance, void, or shortage. I am connected to everything and everyone. And the closer I can get to that connection and realization and put faith into it, the more statistically successful I can be and the more efficient I can be. Lifelong edging, lifelong practice of canceling what you don't want. Cancel that little voice inside your head. I don't know anyone whose little voice sits there all day long and says, hey, Dave, you look great. That hair is amazing. That shirt is beautiful. Those teeth are one. Not a chance. Oh, everything's going to go fine. That voice is there. And that voice is the ego's, the dark night. He's sitting there. Oh, man, schlep rock. Nobody's going to answer today. Nobody's doing business today. Nobody's going to eat today. Everybody wants to fight you today. Everyone's no. Cancel. Now, that's the conscious. How does it work within the subconscious? In the subconscious, we have thoughts that are stored in an intermediate memory. And those thoughts are in the subconscious, and there's about 40,000 of those same thoughts. So now you realize how critical it is to input the good data, because if 21 days or more, depending on your own quantum being, how easy it is to store in the intermediate memory by what you're born with, in 21 days or more, those 10,000 thoughts, if they keep coming saying you're not worthy, you're not worthy, you're not worthy, pretty soon you're going to hold you're not worthy in your subconscious. And now, not only will it come up once during the day, but every time the lemon is squeezed, guess what lemon juice comes out? You're not worthy. You hear it, I'm not worthy. You go to bed thinking I'm not worthy. When you go to ask somebody, you're not worthy. When you get something, you're not worthy. It's sitting there in your subconscious. So if you have ideas, thoughts, words that keep coming up, even if you cancel it, cancel, and it keeps coming back, I'm not worthy, then you know it's in the intermediate memory, in the 40,000 of the same thoughts you have every day. So what do? Well, we cancel the negative thoughts, right? So we keep canceling. Every time I think of an attacking thought, a judgment, a condition, a negative thought that I can't win, or voting for somebody or something else, boom, cancel. Keeps on coming back. It's in my subconscious. Now what do? We clear it. Let me give you an example. When I was little, not that I'm big right now, but when I was younger, my mom, 6 kids, we would stay with my grandma, and very wise woman. And my siblings were extremely academic, and they were really good kids, and they studied, and I was extremely hyperactive, and I didn't like to study. And so I used to tell my grandma all the time, grandmother, I'm bored. What can I do? And she would consistently, every day, persistently, without quit, tell me that only stupid people get bored, that smart people think of things to do. And so the data input at a very young age for me was that I was stupid because I really couldn't think of things to do. I just was bored. I didn't want to study. And that manifested itself for a long time in my life. And looking back and learning from it and taking the lessons of my subconscious memory of being stupid, it allowed me and caused me to, one, project my insecurity, right? Because I project everything that's within me. And so I had to be superior because I felt that I was inferior. So not only would I over exaggerate, lie, manipulate, oversell, back end sell, and say things to make me feel better and bigger and separate, but I'd also surround myself with people that were inferior in the capabilities that I was looking at. So I would actually feel better, which is probably the worst thing that I did to myself, is surround myself with people that were less in their capabilities instead of asking for help and surrounding myself with people that understood and had situational knowledge and raise my and elevate me and my vibration and my awareness and allow me to share in their situational knowledge, allow me to take the lessons of the dummy tax that they've already paid. But instead, one simple incident when I was young created a subconscious idea that I was stupid. And I didn't even find out. It was really interesting. I was with Dr. Sangeeta Sahi, the woman who taught me to meditate as well as to be a healer. And at the time I had no idea. And she told me, and literally almost lost all her credibility. She said, David, you think you're stupid. She said, you carry an energy that you're stupid. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, I do this, that's the last thing. You can make fun of something else of mine, but I'm very secure in my intellect. And she said, do you think so? Consciously, I was, because what I think, say, and do all were indicative of someone that felt as if they were intelligent. But subconsciously, I carried that energy from being a 5 to 7-year-old with my grandma telling me only stupid people get bored. Smart people think of things to do. Now, finally, you got that time, we're canceling. You're stupid, you're not worthy, all these different energies that I've carried in my lifetime that has cost me millions and millions of dollars, and relationships and heartache and resistance, stress, void, shortages and obstacles and pain, mental, physical, spiritual, emotional, and financial pain, because I didn't learn to cancel and clear. Cancel those negative thoughts and words and hearing and seeing and tasting. Cancel. Don't allow it to get into your intermediate memory of those 40,000 of the same thoughts that you now carry with you as an energy, that you then actually have ideas and beliefs and habits and disciplines that are relying on those 40,000 thoughts that make you you. But then there's always, in every human being that I've ever met, things that happen that are so dramatic that we don't even like to remember it. And those are the things that we have to learn how to connect, right? We cancel the conscious, we clear the unconscious, clear. By the way, when I clear, I try to have the ferocious Buddha in me, straighten my spine, take deep breaths through my nose, out through my mouth, kind of the stop, drop, and roll. Clear. Erase it from my intermediate memory, erase it from that hard drive. I'm not going to listen to that. I'll keep canceling it on the conscious level, but I'm going to clear that. And it will take some time, because remember, we edge goodness in and edge goodness out. It's a practice. It takes the consistent, persistent pursuit of our potential. And I implore you to enjoy that. But there's some things that happen in our life that we just can't let go. Some of it we remember, some we don't. Abuses, diseases, traumatic and dramatic events that occur in our unconscious. And how do we know it? I'll tell you, it always manifests or reveals itself before you go to bed or when you wake up. It's those things that just come to you and you can't go to sleep, or you wake up with a pit in your stomach and you don't know why, and you tell yourself, let it go. You could even now tell yourself, clear, cancel, breathe, anything. But the next night, it's still there. It's still there. And I know all of you know what I'm talking about. I had my dad leave when I was 5. And until I was deep into my 20s, I never had seen or remembered seeing my father crying. And it was like something that unconsciously, I think, really bugged me. I unconsciously believed that my dad didn't care about me. You know, everybody knows the birthday story and the jacket, and we had, you know, all these kids, and I always felt that, you know, he was my hero, and all these different things. I couldn't understand how he could let me go. You know, I just couldn't. And when I was like 26, I had told somebody that my dad had never cried. And meanwhile, everybody who knows me, anyone that knows me, knows I'm the biggest crybaby. I'll cry just talking about my mom, and get choked up just talking about certain circumstances. I try to clear the connection, to be as emotional as I can, to allow it to come through me so that you know how I feel. But I went to bed that night really bothered. I couldn't sleep, questioning how my father felt about me and how could he feel separate from me. I was his son. And when I went to bed, I saw my father way back when we left in Akron, Ohio, the airport. You could go to the gate. And I remember specifically, I was 9 years old, turning around, getting on the airplane and turning around and seeing my dad cry. It took me until I was 26 to realize how much my dad cared about me. I'm crying right now thinking about it. These are the things that sit in your unconscious. You know, when I lost everything, I had to work through 4 different steps to process an unconscious belief. The one that every night came out, you know, I was, number one, I had to be grateful for what had happened. I had to be grateful for all the lessons, the light and love that had occurred, even though I had lost everything. And I worked really hard to be grateful. And I connected to gratitude, right? We cancel the conscious, we clear the subconscious, but the unconscious take 4 different tools. The first is gratitude. And I had to become truly grateful. And it did happen overnight. The process of connecting for me took 9 years to feel completely at peace with losing everything. 9 years it took me. 9 years. And I'll tell you why. Because first I had to work through the gratitude. I started telling, you know, consciously and subconsciously, everyone's like, oh, you know, I'm sorry you lost everything. Oh, you know, making jokes about it, going, best thing that ever happened to me, saved my life. Julie saved my life. My wife saved my life. Best thing that ever happened to me. I'm telling everybody, convincing, right? And then I go home, as grateful as I was, and I dream about some of the people that weren't completely honest, that back end sold me, lied to me, cheated me. I felt offended. I still felt the needs of the ego, still edging goodness out of my life. And I used to dream of taking off their fingernails and pouring Tabasco in it. You know, all these awful thoughts. And I'd be like, cancel, cancel, clear, clear, clear. And then I worked through the second step of gratitude. I started getting gracious about it. And it came through the second step, forgiveness. Forgiveness is so powerful because it brings peace. And I realized I hadn't forgiven myself. I hadn't forgiven myself so I could forgive others. And that forgiveness took those 9 years to truly forgive myself for all the lessons that I hadn't learned and to truly feel grateful for them. The third one is critical. The third step is accountability. And I learned at a very young age not to live below the line. My mom used to always say, that's below the line, blame, shame, and justification. And when you had all those siblings, it was so easy to point your fingers, right? I remember this one, right? If you have one finger pointing at me, you got 3 pointing at yourself. That took me a while to figure out. I was in a lawsuit over a piece of property with a friend, and I took no accountability. right? No accountability until I started putting attention and intention into what was my part, what did I do to attract it to myself, and what am I supposed to learn from it? And accountability gave me control of the situation. Gratitude gave me perspective, forgiveness gave me peace, and accountability gave me control. And the fourth step of connecting, and connecting is not only connecting to the greatest source of light, love, power, and energy, but also allowing it to come through us with appreciation, with gratitude, and adding value of our own to it and connecting that to everyone else. That power and source only came through the understanding of that communication. And so I'm going to finish up the training with these 4 steps of how I shifted my energy so that I actually ended up thanking one of the people that I got into a lawsuit, one of the people that I blamed for my accountable situation after I'd forgiven myself and been so grateful for everything I learned through it. So I can now allow it to come through me for everyone else to help them. Don't do this. You can cancel in front of anyone you want. You can clear in front of anyone you want, but I go by yourself if you want to work the practice of shifting your energy through Connect. So what I do, utilizing gratitude, forgiveness, accountability, and that inspiration, is I shut my eyes. Whatever traumatic or dramatic thing that you cannot let go of, maybe you were abused as a child, maybe there's alcohol problems, maybe you have huge secrets and lies and skeletons that you just cannot reduce. What I want you to do is shut your eyes and see what it is right there. If there's that person, place, or thing that just keeps you up at night and makes you sick in the morning, I want you to picture it. And then I want you to start thinking how grateful you are for it. I want you to forgive it. I want you to be accountable for it. I want you to find the light, the love, and the lesson in it, and literally find a light. I don't care what color that light is. And then I want you to cover the picture in your head with that light of gratitude, forgiveness, accountability, and inspiration. I want you to cover that light. And then in the same mind's eye, with your eyes closed, with no one else around, I want you to think about your love, your light, your lesson, something that represents your love, your light, your lesson. For me, obviously, my children, my wife, Bananas Fosters, things like that just are filled with light, love, and lessons. And what I do is I take in my mind's eye the light that's covering and surrounding what I'm most afraid of, that is edging the most goodness out of my life, consciously, subconsciously, and unconsciously. And I take that light and I cover that which already holds the light, the love, and the lesson. Now in front of me is one big ball of light, full of gratitude, forgiveness, accountability, and inspiration. And then I take that one big ball of light with what I'm most afraid of and what I love the most, and I take the ball of light with my eyes closed and I cover myself with it. And I hold that light of gratitude, forgiveness, accountability, and inspiration. I hold it until I feel good, because that's the thermostat of my life. I hold it there until I feel good. And then I remind myself that this is a practice that I'm edging goodness into my life through this practice of cancel, clear, and connect. And it may take one day, it may take 10 days, it may take 10 years, it may take 10 lifetimes, but I'm going to enjoy the consistent, persistent pursuit of my potential by edging goodness into my life with the e-guy, because I am, not the ego. There's no more edging goodness out of your life, economically, spiritually, mentally, all of the ways that we do it. Know and stay on the right trajectory. Stop, drop, and roll. Utilize cancel, clear, and connect, and you can have whatever you want in life and business. I appreciate everybody for the time. We got our normal Q&A here, so let's jump up. I appreciate everyone. We do, by the way, have the Ultimate Ego Guide that I built for free. Go ahead, reach out to me. You can email me at david@dmeltzer.com if you want that. You could text me at 949-298-2905. It's free. Everything here is free. Don't worry, there's no monster at the end of the book. My favorite Grover. There's just me, lovable, cuddly David. And please grab a free Ultimate Ego Guide. We're all over it. All right, let's get to questions. I saw a video by Gary Vee, my boy, the other day, where he calls a guy out by saying his negative behaviors and patterns are stemmed from being insecure and self-conscious. Is the ego related to being insecure and self-conscious? Absolutely. Absolutely. That's exactly right. The ego is directly related to projecting what your separation is. Insecurity, right, is within your conscious, subconscious, and unconscious. Insecurity is the separation between you and others, an inferior superiority, and you project that like I did my stupidity. And even an unintentional programming can cause some serious effects on your life. Let's look here. Thank you, Edward, for that question. Stella, many of us on this call are in sales, marketing, and or consulting. Our purpose is to serve. What do you suggest in terms of managing child state, adult state, and parent state when on a call with a prospect? So illuminate child state, illuminate adult state, and illuminate the parent state when you're on a call with a prospect. Go ahead, manage expectations. It's not going to be a surprise. I think it's really funny during this period of time because people are learning what I've been doing for years, which is illuminate the situation that I'm in. Oh, sorry, I'm on the beach. Oh, that's my dog. Oh, be you, your frequency, your vibration, illuminate those states, and people will just emotionally attached to you, be more aligned, more connected to, because guess what? They're living and managing their child state, adult state, and parent state while they're on the call with you, the sales consultant that you are. Robert, my friend, I believe like David, nothing is for me. It only goes through me with appreciation, gratitude, and your ability, your capability, synergistic and supplementary to what comes through you as you're connected to everything and everyone. Emotions are powerful of energy that can be absorbed, deflected, and redirected. How do you, David, practice productive use of emotional energy? Thank you for saying practice, because that's what I do. What I'm trying to do is clear the connection in two directions. Clear the connection in two directions. One, the connection between that which I'm connected to, this unbelievable source of energy, light, call it the sun, and I'm clearing the clouds to suck as much sunlight as I can. I'm then processing it like a sun screen and battery that appreciates, and then I'm clearing the connection, the interference between me and everything else. And I do that, by the way, really key point, get your pens. I do that by understanding and praying for happiness. So I use understanding to clear that interference and corrosion between me and everything else, right? And I use the clearing of the ego and understanding of the ego, not of the others, in order to clear my connection between me and the sun, the light, the love, the lessons, etc. I want to shout out to my cousin, Howard Cash. Thank you, brother, for joining me. Unbelievable genius, has saved lives with DNA science in the Twin Towers in New York, and took particles of DNA and found and discovered and gave happy closure to a lot of families. Thank you to my cousin Howard, genius. Due to scheduling, I can only stay on this call for 15 minutes. Plan to rewatch on YouTube channel later. Perfect. And anybody else that wants the ultimate guide to the ego, we have all of these up on YouTube. I'll send you the link. You can go back, watch your favorite parts, or boo your favorite parts, or make fun of me. Whatever you do that makes you feel better, use that, my guide and the video, to do so. Shannon, such a great tool. Cancel, 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 and replace that negative program with a new program, a positive one. So useful. Do you use the Callahan technique also? I've learned the Callahan technique, great technique. Any technique you want to use that's practice is going to help, right? Anything reduces the interference and corrosion, anything that allows you to have more positive thoughts without attacks, judgments, and conditions that are infecting the 10,000 new thoughts you have every day, or infecting your intermediate hard drive of your subconscious, or even worse, your DNA, your quantum memory, your purpose or frequency or vibration. Huge. So I don't care what techniques you use them all, as long as it has that temperature of feeling good. Live in the e-guy, right? I am healthy. I am wealthy. I am benevolent and beloved. I am a servant of value. I am. Live in the e-guy, not the ego. Get it all in, let it leave, and you do not edge goodness out. Tips for negotiating with people who have big egos. Make yourself equal. Understand and pray for their happiness, but stick to the 5 tips of how negotiation works. Number 1, credibility. Do not lower your vibration. Stick to the truth. In all statements, stick to the truth. 2, emotional attachment. Understand why they're projecting their insecurity. You may be able to resolve it and create a better feeling and value. Then still stick to the quantifying of reasons, impacts, capabilities. Find out what is the insecurity or the separation and try to fill it through a bigger impact. And then you can talk about the features and benefits that may apply to the certain ego that they do. If someone has a big ego, they're the easiest person to sell as long as you understand that ego, because the ego needs to be fed. And guess what? If you find the food for feeding, it will feed itself so easily. So if somebody has the need to be offended, it will feed itself as fast as anything in the world. If it has a need to be guilty, it will feed itself very quickly. You can feed the ego and get deals done as well in negotiation. I prefer to stick with the credibility, emotional attachment, quantitative reasons, impacts, capabilities, and overall impact to change and understand and pray for their happiness, and then features and benefits. Eric, can you share more info on your experience of becoming a healer and learning to meditate? Can you also repeat who was that taught you how? Dr. Sangeeta Sahi. She met me on an airplane and conned me into meditation at first by telling me she could raise my vibration and awareness, that if I vibrated faster, the earth, plants, animals, sound, light, and thought all vibrate faster and faster and faster. In fact, the thing that vibrates the fastest is the truth. And then she told me she could raise my awareness because I wasn't interested in meditation because I didn't have time and I didn't need it. But she told me I could raise my vibration to find out when to buy and sell. And that's where I started learning. And then through that learning of meditation, theta meditation, to raise my vibration, I learned an awareness of how healing occurs. And as a quantum healer, a healer that works within the continuum of the conscious, subconscious, and unconscious mind, a quantum healer, someone that can activate your DNA in order to effectuate what you want, to create a frequency or vibration. That's how I do it. Not just on some woo-woo spiritual meditative level, but actually pragmatic money-making energetic level, meaning I believe make a lot of money to help a lot of people and have a lot of fun. And that money itself is a currency. It's an active energy. It's a vibration that you put into the flow in order to get what you want. And you blend it with the other currency of faith in order to live this life and pursue a higher life, right? We live our life for today. We learn our life for a lifetime. Great question, Eric. Jeremy, how long did it take you to build your business to the point of feeling more successful than the everyday average Joe? What were the 3 things you did that were on the more admin or sales side of things? Okay, first of all, never compare yourself to others. Right? I don't count other people's money. I don't want you counting mine. I am not separate from you. I am mostly and focused on elevating the average Joe to elevate myself, elevating the average Joe. And I am everyday average Joe and everyday average Dave and everyday average Justin and everyday average Colleen and everyday average Jeremy. Now, let's get to the pragmatic. What were the 3 things you did that were on the more administrative or sales side of things? What I did, and there's 5 things that I do, is 1, take inventory of my values. 2, I learned to ask and attract. In person, on the phone, via email and media, radio, print, TV, and social media, I learned to ask a series of questions of how I can provide value. And I make sure I could quantify it. I'm not going to sing the Barney song, but I was not focused on subjective value. Right? I love you, you love me. God, I can't help myself. Nobody makes any money. No, I was into quantitative reasons, impacts, and capabilities. I was in quantifying those things through a process of questions of how I could provide value or service. And 2, I stopped seeing people as gatekeepers, and I saw everyone through the process of EGI, understanding that we're all connected. So there couldn't be someone separate from me, keeping me away from what I wanted. But more importantly, there's only people trying to tour me or take me to what I wanted. So I had to learn a series of questions to sponsors. A sponsor is someone who you ask, do you know anyone that can help me? And a power sponsor is someone that you find out through the same series of questions. Not only do they know someone that can help me, but they also can help me themselves. And then student of your calendar, not to be too repetitive, right? What you have planned, what you don't have planned in your sleep. Make sure everybody out there just simply saying thank you every day, drinking a gallon of water and sleeping 8 hours. And then do it now. 100% of the things you do now get done, people get done, are far more elevated than those who don't. And then finally, as we're talking about here, practice ending fear. Number 5. Great question, Jeremy. Thank you. Eduardo Dos. Second Eduardo of the day. Do you think people with scoliosis or spine misalignment may have issues with energy flow and clearing negative energy since the body circuit is disrupted? Consciously, they may have some energy issues that are flowing through their body. But you have your mind in the subconscious and you have the unconscious competency in your DNA. None of that should interfere with the connection you have with the greatest light, love, and lessons. None of it should. In fact, it could enhance it, right? As I believe in toughness and as I believe in telephone, where it comes through us with appreciation, it may be different, but not better or worse when you appreciate it, when you're grateful for the energy and you give it away to everything you're connected to. I think more is the physical pain. What lesson are you supposed to learn, right? Because when pain, it's the identifier that you have a lesson. It's like your teacher today in the virtual schools, they're leaving in your inbox what your assignment for the day is. That's what pain is. Physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual and financial pain. If you have it, it's like your inbox telling you, hey, here's your lesson for the day. Go enjoy the consistent, persistent pursuit of your potential of learning that. And it might be a 2-day lesson. It might be a 2-year lesson or a 2 lifetime lesson, but they're going to be there. And if you have pain, that's how the conscious being says, hey, dummy, you got a lesson to learn. Daryl, so how do we identify and cleanse these unconscious beliefs? Well, they're the ones that reoccur and bug us the most. The unconscious beliefs will reveal themselves as you get squeezed. So you need to pursue your potential. When a lemon is squeezed, lemon juice comes out. So the more you allow yourself to be squeezed, the more you allow yourself to stay in that learning zone, more and more of what is in that unconscious of who you are. Your lemon juice will identify itself and allow you to shift the energy and make that lemonade. Very good. What do you do to let loose and have fun? Every single day, I have a minimum of an hour of a day in my health, a minimum of 30 minutes with my wife, 30 minutes with my son, minimum 2 minutes with my daughter, minimum of an hour, 1 minute with my mom, making sure she knows I'm healthy, happy, I love her and appreciate her. The only 4 things a parent wants to know. And I have and let loose and have fun and learn to love and find the light and lessons and everything. So what do? I create a mindset of finding, letting loose and having fun in everything I do, even these trainings. So I pay money to do this. This is so much fun. That's why I do it for free. It's what we do. How can we not react out of ego when we make a mistake? You're always going to react out of ego when you make a mistake because you're protecting yourself. The key is don't let it take you years to get back to center. Don't let it take you months to get back to center. Don't let it take you weeks to get back to center, or days or hours or minutes. Get it down to moments. Why? Because we're e-guy. We're edging goodness into our lives by practicing identifying the ego, stop, drop, and roll, and utilizing cancel, clear, and connect, in which to effectuate the speed in which we can get back onto the trajectory of having no resistance in an effortless existence of happiness. The greatest disease, the one that we're sharing today by witnessing this, the one that's strengthening our immune system so we have the rest of the afternoon, no matter what, feeling good. And making others feel good as well. Any thoughts on the UFC holding a live sporting event next weekend? NASCAR as well. Also, have you ever met Dana White? Yes, I have. I got a video. Go check it out. It's an extraordinary time at the Super Bowl. I know you've worked with some fighters in the past. Yeah, a ton. Tito and a variety of UFC, MMA, Michael Chandler, my man. Woo! Paige, just a variety, unbelievable athletes, unbelievable warriors. They encompass toughness, and it's a skill and a talent and a knowledge that I want to always carry with me, is a toughness to understand pain and to be able to learn from that pain. And all of these people at UFC have. Not sure I want to touch on live sporting events because I don't really, and this is a lesson that I've learned about the ego. I don't know what I don't know. I'm trying to take in stable data by seeking it. I'm not allowing it to inundate me about the infectious nature of COVID. But I'm going to allow the people that I've elected, the people that I've relied on under the social contract of democracy in order to effectuate the lessons that we're supposed to learn. I'm not going to go. I don't want to take that risk. just like investing money. Timing and risk assessment, those are the two things I look at in what I'm doing. I don't want to take that risk, but I'm really curious to see what effects it does has, and any stable data that I get from it, then I can help protect other people, and we can move forward as a leader in sports, making keen recommendations on what to do at live sporting events. But eventually I know the stopping point for live sporting events, or the starting point, the safe one, will be when we have the vaccine. What are some common ways that people let their ego get in the way of business? I think we answered how the ego gets in our way in life and business ad nauseum. But anytime you allow the ego to create interference, void, shortages, and obstacles from what you want in life and business, you've allowed the ego to do so. That's why it's a practice of EGI. Dave, Lou, can you speak to the ego of an athlete, musician, actor that allows them to perform with success? They have confidence, but also a false confidence to go forward. You have to have some ego to compete mano a mano. There's the EGI and ego all in place, right? The ego is the thing that makes us afraid and allows us to say this is false confidence, but the practice of confidence allows us to have a higher percentage of confidence than false confidence. And sometimes this false confidence is the catalytic event, the motivator, in order for the inspiration to take over of true confidence. And so utilizing the ego with the EGI in order to effectuate acceleration, growth, and segmentation, in order to effectuate our ability to get motivated, because the one thing that fear does for us is it motivates us. Fear will motivate. It will not inspire you. It will suck the energy and soul right out of you. But in the short term, it gets you going. And if you have the tools to allow fear, ego to get you going with what you call false confidence, you then have an accelerated momentum in order to be inspired, because nothing happens until you move. And sometimes it's fear that makes us move. And then we start practicing EGI instead of ego. Ego could be the initial reaction, but the action we take from that reaction is EGI, meaning edging goodness or inspiration into our life. Can the ego ever overpower? Absolutely. When the fear is so great, it can definitely overpower. It totally creates a body, mind, and soul experience that's unbelievable. You can see experiences where elderly grandmas have lifted cars to save grandchildren. It's an unbelievable power of the ego, but it's short term. Nobody talks about when the grandma lifts that car and saves the baby, what she's done to her tendons or muscles in her back. You can go ahead medically and look at these extraordinary things the ego has done with the motivation power that it has, the catalytic event of being able to create this false inertia. There's no inspiration in it. It's all motivation. But what is the effect that it has when it overpowers us? If we can regulate the ego and convert it into EGI, edging goodness into our life, edging goodness through inspiration, boom, we are at a perfect balance of the ego and the EGI. Can you define accountability? Letitia, yes, I can. For me, accountability is two questions. And it's first, it's not responsibility. So liability and responsibility are confused with accountability. If I'm sitting at a stop sign and somebody comes behind me texting and slams into the back of my car, cancel. I am accountable. I'm not liable or responsible. The laws of our land, the things that we voted through the democracy and social contract that we agreed upon, living here in the United States, determine who's going to pay the damages. But in the end, as I'm sitting there, I need to ask myself, what did I do to attract this to myself? And what am I supposed to learn from it? That's accountability compared to liability and responsibility. Stella, I'm curious about how to get into state prior to the call with a prospect. For me, it's all vision and energy. So for me, I close my eyes and I see what I want. And I tell myself it's effortless, that I'll only receive everything that I want, and I'm going to provide more value than I'm going to receive. And giving and receiving are one. I put myself not only into a mental state, a physical state, but an emotional and an energetic state, that I'm providing more value. And I'm convincing myself through meditation, through vision, through true manifestation, what I want. and it's a great practice. How can we tackle negative things around us which we cannot control? Well, cancel, clear, connect is one way, but looking for the light and the love and the lessons in them as well. Also understanding that if something cannot be understood by us, then the only course of action we can have is to pray for its happiness. That's how we find the light, the love, and the lessons in it. By the way, a lot of this stuff is included in the Ultimate Guide to Ego. Make sure you email me at david@dmeltzer.com if you want it, or text me at 949-298-2905 if you want it. Everything's free. Don't worry, there's no monster at the end of the book. You can read Sesame Street's Grover. It's my favorite book. Gary, what routine do you have at the end of your day and start of your day that help you get your edge in the direction you want? So what practice do we have? So I have a wind down and a wind up. Wind down starts about 45 minutes before I run out of energy. So it's no alcohol, no routines. No caffeine. It's no negative thoughts, words, actions, games, TV, movies. It's also physically no great exertion. All of these different things are a wind down so that I can pass out or try to make it to 11 to pass out. Allowing me to wake up at 4. 4 is very easy because I meditate for 20 minutes, raising my vibration, finding my highest frequency, setting it as a baseline for the day. I believe there's only one action in the day. Everything else is a reaction to that action. So my one action should be find my highest frequency, find my baseline, and anytime that I find myself off of it, try to get back into the right frequency, the right trajectory in moments time, not minutes or hours or days or weeks or months or years, which I had in the past. Lewis, hey, David, what is something you wish you had known when you first started your journey into business as an influencer on IG? Always the lesson that I've learned is radical humility. Every time, and this is why I always say, I don't know if I'm 10% of the way there, 50% of the way there, whatever percent of the way there. But for me, it's just being humble and saying, I don't know what I don't know. There's so much more to learn. There's so much more. And I'm trying to quickly get rid of the pain by finding a mechanism or a solution or a practice or this edging in order to reduce the amount of pain that I have and expand and accelerate and grow as fast as I can and allow it to come through me for others to help them do the same. Hopefully that helps here. Getting through this, how do you change your quantum memory that you got from your parents and also keep the one you like? Okay, so quantum memory is from at least 4 generations. I believe it's from multiple lifetimes. So quantum memory is your genetics, it's your DNA. There's an epigenetic layer of that activates all the things in your quantum memory, even stuff that you may not be aware of. It also can be adjusted and trained. It's a hard drive. It's a long-term memory. So it all starts by canceling, clearing, and connecting the data that's going in there by a repetitive nature, which takes us all the way back to how we're happy by enjoying the consistent, persistent pursuit of your potential, understanding the conscious, subconscious, and unconscious continuum, understanding that the law of Goya moves itself through that spectrum into the law of attraction or the law of frequency or the law of vibration or the law of the awareness, whatever you want to call it, but that becomes quantum in our nature. All quantum means it's inherent in our nature, part of your entirety. Last thing here, Sadara White, some things are offensive. How are we to just ignore it if someone says or does something offensive? Oh, no. I didn't say ignore it. I said to understand it and pray for their happiness. Maybe you can enlighten them. You don't ignore it, but you should not have a need to be offended. You don't have a need to be offended, but if somebody has attacking thoughts, judgments, conditions, hate, negativity, cancelable thoughts, there's no need to be offended by it, but we should take the proactive action to understand it and pray for that person's happiness so they don't project that insecurity and hurt or damage other people, or even worse, send that energy that then propagates itself into these other viruses and diseases. Instead, we want to send out happiness, which is the strongest of all viruses, the one that we now can spread just by witnessing it and strengthen everyone's immune system. I want everybody to know I certainly appreciate your time. We'll be back next Friday. Please make sure your family, friends, associates all register. It's always free. Please join me. If you want the Ultimate Ego Guide. It's free as well. Just email me, david@dmeltzer.com, or text me at 949-298-2905. Join my community. Let's create a collective consciousness. I'm looking for 1,000 people to empower 1,000 people to empower 1,000 people to be happy. Have a wonderful weekend. I'll see you next week, 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern time. God bless. Be kind to your future self and do good deeds.